Hey guys, what is up? AwesomeTheSauce here. I hope you guys are having a great day and welcome to a top 5 video. I don't usually do these, but I've been doing a lot of PvP recently. And as someone who uses a lot of TCs and also sees other people use a lot of TCs, I thought I'd make this video on my opinion. It's a very opinionated video. I thought I'd make a video on my opinion of what I think the most broken treasure cards are. Let's define broken. Some of these could just get a small nerf and they would be perfectly acceptable spells. And I think others are just things that are so powerful that it really raises a question of why they're even allowed in PvP anyways. So without further ado, let's get right into what I think are the top 5 broken treasure cards in maximum and honestly all levels of PvP. Number 5 is something that I didn't even realize was that broken until I actually started using it, and it just doesn't make sense why it's in the game. We're gonna start pretty light with this one. I think it's a very obvious nerf type thing. I don't think you should just outright ban it. I'm talking about these 45 bubbles, bro. These are so weird for why there's this powerful. And maybe I'm wrong and maybe every other school has it, but if you're looking for all practical reasons, I think Myth is the school that has the most 45 bubbles out of any school. Unlike other schools, Myth has a very weak bubble. It's only 25%. So you would think the TC would raise it by 10% maybe. I mean, this is a very clear example of a spell that exists that really does need to be nerfed. A 45 bubble for 2 pips makes it so that if your opponent runs out of bubbles or loses a bubble ward, like let's say I were to do this, and let's say I were to have a deck like this, if once they lose this, all I gotta do is spam a couple of shads, and I'm looking at a constant buff that's on me that's even more powerful than a treasure card blade. I think as a rule of thumb, a TC bubble should almost never be more powerful than a regular unenchanted blade. I think that should be the rule of thumb. Once it starts getting higher than that, then you're looking at something that's just way too valuable for 2 pips. This could be a 3 pip bubble very easily. I hope they think about nerfing this at some point, or, you know, just rebalancing it maybe. But it's just a weirdly powerful thing. Number 4 on the list is, I don't know, I don't think this is crazy broken. Now, this is a whole class of spells. This isn't just like one school specifically, but it's the shield and hit spells. So the example that we have right here is Cold Iron, but this is not the only type. The other spells that do exist are Fire Guts, which I have the wrong version, but it looks like that, but it does this. There's also the mid spell, which is Chimenea, and I think the reason why these are kind of stupid is because when you're looking at how turn-based works, the whole point of turn-based should really be whether you can choose between a hit or a shield, whether you're hitting into something in an offensive way or whether you're retreating a little bit in a defensive way. Now, I'm not saying that there should be no such thing as a spell that does something both offensive and defensive, but what I am saying is that when it does do something like that, there should be a huge trade-off. The problem with spells like Cold Iron and Chimenea and Fire Gut is that they're way too defensive for what they do offensively. I'm not saying that this is like completely broken because I think it does add an element of strategy to the game. It's just if you were to have a hit and shield kind of spell, I definitely think that 70% is just a little bit too much. I think if I were to change Cold Iron, I would, or any of these spells, what I would really do is make it a 50 shield, you know? So it would be closer to like the power of a weakness or a tower than it ever is a set shield. So yeah, I mean, I feel like this card just gives you a lot of unearned tempo. Like, I feel like if you're doing a bad job of keeping shields off and you're not doing a good job of that, this is just a really easy way to get back into the swing of things when falling back on the momentum of the game should be punished by the player that is ahead in momentum. I just think this gains way too much momentum, and honestly, it should just shield for a lot less. Number 3. It's another goddamn myth spell. You might have noticed almost all of these fall under MILF. The first 3 anyways. It's a little crazy. But the question that we have to ask is why is this so powerful? Now, this is going to be one of the few examples of a spell on this that isn't really powerful for the fact that it does too much damage for its utility. This is a really good example of just a spell that just doesn't make any sense. Now, unlike other hit and buffs, this spell does not take any, you know, knocks to its pip cost, to its actual function. It doesn't take, you don't really lose anything. A bubble is 2 pips. A 25 bubble is 2 pips. So why does this get the utility of breaking a shield and it still gives the same bubble. The worst part about this spell specifically is that the other two spirit schools, we're looking at Death and Life, they have spells that also hit and bubble, but they're 3 pips. Why does Rat Illusionist only hit for 2 pips? It doesn't make any sense. This one spell has made it almost impossible to truly bubble fight a myth, and it's one of the big reasons why they're so good at max PvP. I feel like if you made this 3 pips, you would already start a very, very meaningful change into nerfing myths so that it's not so overpowered at Visionary PvP. Number 2 on the list is a spell that only affects ice wizards, and I think this is one of the most broken spells in the game currently. If we're looking just at treasure cards, I think this is number 2 by a long shot. This spell just does so much damage for what it also does in terms of the utility of it. Just to give you guys an idea of how crazy this spell is, if you look at something, right, like an actual 2-pip hit, like Sun Serpent, or Snow Serpent, right? Let's say you make TCs of this. You would have around 400. For just 100 less damage, you get an entire 40 blade added onto it. Icebird is an extremely good minion killer, it's an extremely good shield breaker, and it's also a really good finisher just off of the pure amount of damage that it does. This is once again something that I would not say just ban from PvP. I would say if you were to change this, make the blade a lot less or make the damage a lot less. This is just way too much in one spell. Especially when you're thinking about Ice's identity as a school that should shield a lot and should defend a lot. This spell makes no sense. It is the most powerful hit and buff in the game, I think, per pip, if you really do the math. Look at my goddamn deck. It has more Icebirds than almost any other thing besides the bombs. That should tell you something. Why is something like a treasure card that isn't really something that your school should need anyways, why is it such a big part of every Ice Wizard setup? I like the strategy of being able to hit and blade. It's just, it does so much damage that a 40% blade added onto it just doesn't add up. It just doesn't make sense to me. Finally, we're at the number 1, what I think is the most broken current TC in Wizard101. If you guys know me and you've been watching the streams a lot, you probably already know what this is. I think that Ifrits of any kind, the TC versions, the one that hit and do a -90, I think these are by far some of the most broken treasure cards currently in PvP. And honestly, you might be wondering why is this at the top of the list? Well, at the end of the day, you gotta look at how many pips a -90 weakness should be worth. In many ways, a -90 weakness is even more powerful than a dispel. Because at the end of the day, at least a dispel, you can take it off with something of your own school that doesn't cost any pips. The only way that you can get rid of a -90 without using pips is with a want it. When you do that want it, you always leave yourself open. So we're already looking at something around the value of at least 2 pips. If a -90 weakness were to be a spell, it would at least be 2 pips, but because it does even more than a regular dispel, we're looking at something that's worth closer, in my opinion, to 3 or 4 pips. You're looking at something that completely outclasses everything. No matter what type of damage you want to do on that round, it will not do anything meaningful. So let's say a -90 weakness and hit card were to exist, then you would have to think about something that's attached to that -90 that does probably close to 3 or 4 pips of damage. When you're looking at a spell like Balance of Free, let's say that the -90 weakness is worth around 3 pips. I would argue that it's based closer around the 4 pip range, but not only would you need 3 pips, but you'd also need an extra pip added on for doing 2 things at once. So what you're only really left with is 4 pips worth of damage. On a balance spell, a 4 pip worth of damage is only around 400 damage. So this spell does nearly double the amount of damage that it should be doing if you were to balance this on the same scale as every other spell during the audit. What I'm trying to say is, when you're looking at spells that do a hit and a -90, they do way too much damage, especially for treasure cards. Think about it. A treasure card isn't even an enchanted version of the spell. It's only a slightly buffed version. If Sirocco de Jean were to actually be like a 4 pip spell, then it would be doing something close to around 400 damage. It does more than double the damage that it needs to do, and this buys you a free round no matter what your opponent wants to do. Not to mention the fact that these TCs generally are given to a few people rather than many. Few people meaning streamers, content creators, and people who have the empowers to buy them on the market. So this is not even a thing where it's broken because some people choose to use it. It's because some people can use it. I hope that the minus 90 hits, the hit and minus 90s, I hope those are taken out of PvP as quickly as possible. I don't even think they should retire it like they do other spells. I think they should just flat out make it no PvP. Because if you're telling me that just because I have empowers that I can do double the damage on a spell that already has a very powerful utility and win the game because I don't know how to PvP, you're telling me something stupid. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, man. Let me know what you guys think. I wanted to make this video in case, I don't know, some treasure cards were maybe on the docket for like the caramel update. I'm sure they're gonna do a TC audit eventually, but I think this list, in my personal experience, are the ones that I still use some of them, but they still feel like they just do too much for either their pip value, for their damage, or for their utilities. So that's why I wanted to make this video. Drop a like if you enjoyed. I'd love to hear all of y'all's comments and conversations in the goddamn... leave a comment. I want to read them. As always, if somebody has not told you you're awesome today, they doing something wrong. So stay awesome. Check out the links in the description. And yeah, y'all.